Welcome to the St. Louis University Craft Talks, part of the St. Louis Literary Awards series of programming, with our host, Ted Iber, and special guest, Kahlil Irving. The St. Louis Literary Award was created by the Library Associates of St. Louis University in 1967. To learn more about the Literary Award and the writers that we have honored over the years, check out the book The St. Louis Literary Award by St. Louis University Archivist Emeritus John Wade. We would also like to thank our sponsors for the Craft Talks series, Left Bank Books and Kaldi's Coffee Roasting Company. Left Bank Books is one of the oldest and largest independently owned bookstores in the nation, offering a full line of new and used books, gifts, cards, magazines, toys, and services. Kaldi's Coffee Roasting Company is dedicated to creating a memorable coffee experience for their customers and guests, committing to sustainable business practices, providing educational opportunities, and supporting the communities in which they serve. And now, without further ado, Kahlil Irving.
Welcome to Craft Talks, part of the St. Louis Literary Awards series of programs from St. Louis University. My name is Ted Iber. Today, I am honored to speak to multimedia artist Kahlil Irving. Before we begin our discussion, I want to share some of Kahlil's story in the arts. Originally from San Diego, California, Kahlil Robert Irving is an artist currently living and working in the United States. He attended the Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Art at Washington University in St. Louis, finishing an MFA Fellow in 2017, and the Kansas City Art Institute with a BFA in Art History and Ceramic Sculpture in 2015. His work has been exhibited at the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art in Kansas, the Arizona State University Art Museum in Phoenix, and the Rhode Island School of Design Museum in Rhode Island, among others. Kahlil Irving was selected to participate in the 2020 Great Rivers Biennial hosted by the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis, where he is exhibiting a solo exhibition at Dusk on view from September 11, 2020 to September 21st, 2021. Recently, Kahlil was awarded the Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation Grant and the Joan Mitchell Foundation Grant for Painters and Sculptors. In 2018, Irving's first institutional solo exhibition took place at Wesleyan University Center for the Arts in Connecticut and was accompanied by a full-color catalog on the project wall at the Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. Irving's work is also featured in two concurrent collection exhibitions, Making Knowing, Craft in Art, 1950 to 2019, and Nothing is So Humble, Prints from Everyday Objects at the Whitney Museum of American Art. His work is in the collection of the J.P. Morgan Chase Art Collection in New York, the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art in Kansas, the Carnegie Museum of Art in Pittsburgh, and the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York. Kahlil is also one of the new 30 featured artists in Forbes magazine's annual 30 Under 30 Art and Style, showcasing groundbreaking cultural figures in the arts, all under 30 years old. Wow, Kahlil, first, congratulations on both an amazing show at the St. Louis Contemporary Art Museum and being named to Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 list. Wow, what a fantastic way to end a miserable year, at least for many of us, and to begin what looks like a very promising 2021. So psyched to have you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Yeah, the work and the exhibitions and just the participation as a professional in the world is rich when more people, want to participate and work with you, and you have the platform to keep making new things and trying. I mean, I don't want to just show the same thing over and over or present the same idea over and over. So any opportunity that is coming across my table, I do try to use it as a way to take advantage of a new experience that I could have, but also just expand on some things that I may have already completed or done before. So it's a constant or perpetual place of evolution.
Beautifully said. I would love to start our discussion today about process and inspiration. So let me kick it off with process. So you started experimenting with pottery at age 12. How did you get into it?
I started making pottery at the place called the Potter's Workshop that was on the corner of Tower Grove and Manchester and St. Louis. And it was like a Saturday afternoon thing. I think my dad didn't think that I was busy enough playing saxophone and volunteering at the farmer's market in Tower Grove Park when it had started. And the myriad of other things that I did outside of school. I was a YMCA leader in their Leaders Club program in middle school and high school. And so, yeah, it was just kind of I guess my dad just thought I wasn't doing enough. And so I started going on Saturdays, and then I started going after school in the evening. And then that organization dissolved. And then in high school, I met some people that worked at Craft Alliance, and that's how then I applied for their portfolio development program in 2006. And then I started the program in 2007. And then I was in the program all through high school.
So when you first started, when you were just in middle school, did you feel an immediate connection to the medium?
Making pottery, just like everything else that I was doing, was a thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was not about medium. Like a 12-year-old doesn't really know what art is. You just get to do stuff. So I just took advantage of every opportunity to go and do and be around new people and build new relationships that I could.
And did you feel like, I mean, you're right. At 12, oftentimes if it's not clicking right away, or if you're not seeing the end result, what you think in your mind it should be, kids tend to often shy away from it. Did you feel like you were making
here, or
mm-hmm.
an adult, you wanted to get your child to do something because you want them to have a job or a sense of purpose in life. But I think through doing things and exploring possibilities of things, I think young people can start to then develop that. But I don't believe as a child one would know it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that our minds would even be able to fashion what it is. And I've been watching Mixed-ish, and it's not really a good show. I wouldn't ask anybody to watch it. But Rainbow Johnson, who's played by, or in the show, she's narrating, Tracee Ellis Ross is narrating a story about her growing up, or the character in the show, Blackish, her growing up as a child. And she talks about she grew up on a commune, and then her family went to the school to get the flu shot.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she was immediately entranced by the equipment and people there helping others. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't necessarily that she knew she wanted to be a doctor. She just knew that she liked helping people.
Yeah.
And so through that experience, she was able to go through that experience of being around the nurse and helping people and learning about helping people, to then going to high school and going to college and then going to USC medical school. So it's about progress. It's not about knowing one thing and then that's it, and then you go and do it. I think it stunts people's growth to think that they need to, just as a child, they need to get a thing and then they need to do that thing and continually do that thing, because they don't have any experience of trying to do anything else. So it's a little bit tough. So I pushed back on a job.
Mm-hmm.
I applied to work at McDonald's in Penn Station, couldn't get a job in high school, but I could go to Craft Alliance,
mm-hmm.
pottery, and learn from all the older people who were there.
Yeah.
And get a sense of culture, get a sense of challenge, continue to learn how to problem solve and deal with people who have different ideas than I do, and continue to work on what I knew I wanted to figure out in life. I even went to college by someone suggesting me to go to college at the Kansas City Art Institute from Craft Alliance. But when I got to college, and when I got to art school, I didn't know what art really was. I had known making pottery, but I hadn't known what this intellectual pursuit would be.
Mm-hmm.
So then there was a gap. And so it doesn't matter if it's being a doctor, a musician, or a professor, or whatever. There's always going to be some space of what you think it is and what it actually is, what you can do, but then what you have to do to then satisfy the position and the role that you're undertaking.
Right.
And so then it evolves into something else. And I think a lot of people with that stunting, it disallows them to blossom, to perform the job the way they need to perform it. And they also don't allow themselves the space to step back or remove themselves from a job or a position that they've been put in, or they put themselves in when they realize or learn that they can't actually do the job in which they are hired or they're there to do. So it's it's a complex situation. So I kind of, like, as a child and growing up and going to college and everything, I kind of absolved myself from like defining it, and just really every day I work to be more present.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's a good segue to this question. So what is how would you describe your routine when you sit down to create a new piece? Is it something that's been percolating in your head, or how do you go about it? Like when you get to your studio?
I don't have a studio. I haven't worked really in the studio in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have a process like that. I don't think it's like that easy. I think most people just work from the last place they left off, and they continue from there, either making the same thing or a derivative of the same thing that they made before, or they're trying to make something else. So I think it's a lot to try to navigate and try to balance, and it's very complex. For me, I'm doing quite a bit. I'm working on buying a warehouse. I want to grow food. I'm renovating my house. I want to take care of my grandmother full time. I got to have space for myself and build relationships of my own. So it's like all of that, and then dealing with the studio, and if I have tenants, and if I have a myriad of things burgeoning around me, I just sit and take my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't sit and make a piece. I sit and I make incomplete projects. So it's like a consortium of things, groups of things. It's never just one thing on its own. So it could take a few weeks. It could take it's a complex situation of trying to organize and situate content and process, where there's a possibility or a space for agency and action to sit next to each other, or be able to work together and be in a simultaneous movement together.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you strike me as a really prolific artist. You're showing in a lot of places. You have this gorgeous, expansive show at the Contemporary Art Museum. So I understand and I appreciate that it takes time, and yet you seem to be able to process a lot of different things going on. You've got obviously a lot of things in your life that you're working on, and yet you are clearly making the time to create a significant amount of really intellectual work.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's because I've also done residencies and had the capacity of working in certain environments and being supported by access to certain things. So it allows me to be able to have that that chance and that space to be present in that way. So there's that, like, to be able to, what does it mean to be able to work as much as you need to when you can, and you're being supported by an institution? What does it mean to be dependent on an institution to do your work? I don't want to be dependent on any institution, and I don't want my work to have to be be made solely by having access to a space or to what someone can afford me or a space that can afford me. So I'm pushing back on that a lot, and hopefully, um, with my investment in myself, new things and new opportunities can be born from it.
Well, I'll definitely have some more questions about the current show. I'll get to that in just a little bit. So looking over your CV, it lists study and work abroad experiences in a variety of really impressive locations like Hungary, the Czech Republic, Vietnam, Laos, and Israel, Thailand. So how, I guess I should say, have your experiences on those particular trips changed your art, if they have?
No, not really. My work is built out of questions. And so then I kind of take a lot of the questions that I have together and deal with them across, like basically it's all just about time. So the work is conflating a lot of different experiences together simultaneously, and it's not one thing is an influence or one opportunity or space is an influence, but like going through and dealing with content and experience in my life is where the work then comes from. And so it could be social media or photographs from landscapes. It could be how something is developed and built, seeing pieces of architecture and how something may be done in another place and how I maybe don't like it or don't think that that's a good way for something to be done. And so then I put it in my work, and then I, state that it should be different. So it's kind of complicated, but I mean, those opportunities all led to me being who I am today. So the challenge or the question or the space to have those experiences really just kind of make it a sphere. I'm not moving in a line, and my experience isn't a line. My experience is a whole. And I really kind of think about that as a circle, or I think of it as a sphere. You're going and you're returning. You're going around and coming back. You're all like, it's a constant state of reflection. And so those trips and all that work and all the people that I've met and the relationships that I've connected with others, and all of that folds into where I am.
Where do you see it more? How do you project it into the future?
I'm not with COVID and the pandemic. There is only one place to be, and that's right here, right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I mean, I have a lot of upcoming projects and a lot of places that I'll be exhibiting in the coming months, but I in the coming years. But I'm not trying to work and think in that way. I want to be present with my family and be present with the work that I have to do here at home, and go the places where I want to go. So it gives me a little bit more space and a little bit more time to continue, like with what I talked about being present. I want to be present here. I want to be somewhere else. And I think if we asphyxiate our minds on projection and thinking about whatever, could happen or what could be, we're not able to really deal with trauma. And so I think with the global pandemic, with so many people still ignorantly disbelieving that the pandemic is not real, it's like we need to sit in that a little bit more. And why are people believing that? Why do people think that that's wrong? It's not right when thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are dying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad to be right here. I'm glad to work on my house. I'm glad to have the people that I am connected to make this happen, and all the people who have supported my work and supported me growing up, like all the people from Craft Alliance and all of these people. It's like, if you keep working to just propel forward, it's, at what point does all of that stuff get lost?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. The pandemic has certainly helped either refocus or challenge what we may have thought were our primary goals. At least for many of us. I've certainly had the conversation with plenty of other artists in different mediums too, and I would say there's a commonality with what you're expressing as well. All right, so
able, I'm spending all my money. I'm going to not have money later, like so much money later, but
yeah.
It's like also nice to be able to, it's a luxury and a privilege to be able to have that access and have the space to be able to do that. So I also being still and being able to be present in my life at this moment, like there's a way to remember that's not to be taken advantage of. That's my privilege and the capacity of where I am and what I'm able to do.
Yeah. So I want to talk about St. Louis for just a second and how it's impacted your work. So St. Louis, as you well know, a diverse but racially polarized city and in the midst of its own reckoning with social, economic, and racial injustice, particularly in the spotlight since the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson in 2014.
But that's for white people. It's been that the focus and in the present in Black people's lives all this time. So I don't like when people say that. That is like such a farce. It's such bullshit. Black people have been murdered and been treated like shit, and this has been going on for hundreds of years.
Oh, I wouldn't argue that. I'm just simply saying that it's been more. Let me say this:
always been present.
Yeah,
that's the thing I'm trying to tell you. It's always been present. It ain't marked by 2014. It ain't marked by George Floyd. It ain't marked by Breonna Taylor. It's not marked by any of this stuff. It's always been here, and white people choose to be blind to it, choose to be ignorant to it. So it's like it's not. I understand what you're saying, and it's like a nice. It's a very nice way of putting it, but it does not. It's not right. It's not right. Like St. Louis University buy all this property and completely, and supports Grand Center Arts District, blah, 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 but don't pay attention to nothing north of Grand. It's like, it's constant. People always have a choice, and people continue to perpetuate a certain situation, then do what they know is right and what is just for everyone. So I don't want you to say that to me.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like then that things are shifting nationally in a more positive direction, or do you feel like it's more
people still getting murdered? People still getting murdered. The cops still got big budgets and millions of dollars in budgets. You still got white people flying Blue Lives Support flags. You still got motherfuckers riding around with Confederate flags. Why the people who stormed the Capitol not get shot? If we still got that shit going on, no, it ain't no progress. I asked my grandmother weeks ago, I said, is it worse now or was it worse living through Jim Crow? What was it like for white people living through Jim Crow? When do you hear white people talking about what it was like living through Jim Crow? There was nothing, there was no problem for white people during Jim Crow. Not the ones that people are facing, that people I know and people who I look like face. A little, there's always a two sides. So I'm very hesitant and very careful of that kind of conversation or that kind of language, because it's like, what is progress amidst constant social and cultural denigration and destruction? There isn't any progress. It's not progress. It's like we don't get, Black people aren't getting hung by trees, but they're getting killed on the street, and their bodies are left to mold on the sidewalk, and then people cover their body up, but their body's still there. It's like Black people aren't treated like humans. So it's like, to say progress is if there's some kind of sense of equality. There ain't no sense of equality. There ain't ever going to be any sense of equality when you got big multi-million-dollar institutions like SLU and can't fucking treat people right. History organization that is built by slaves and then want to lie about it. You know, Boo McLaughlin, the previous director of Craft Alliance, used to boo-hoo to me all the time that her family brought enslaved people here to St. Louis to build SLU. So it's like, you know, what's progress when you still have this? You're still in everything still run by white men. There is no progress. There's not progress. There's no reparations, and it's not just putting money in people's hands, but reparations as to repair. There's people, very few people are working to repair anything, and that's a problem. And so to fantasize this reality is, I don't live in a fantasy. You know, when you got people who can't get homes, you know, people can't get loans. It's like people want to talk about how bad the North Side is, but Black people who own property on the North Side who fucking take care of their stuff made white people rich by working for not General Motors, but different major companies out in the county. It's like, but it's like how else is anybody else supposed to make it by? We know drugs came to the country because of the government. So it's like if the government put the drugs in the streets and then you blame Black people for drugs, it's like, it's just constant, more and more cognitive dissonance. It's like white people live in a perpetual state of cognitive dissonance and you never want to deal with it. It's like that dissonance doesn't work on me. You know, it's like, and I don't put up with it. My grandmother slaved to take care of white people's kids in hospitals and take care of white people as a nurse for 50 years. My great grandmother cleaned up behind white people all the time. And she had, she didn't have much money. So it's like all these people put this labor in for me to be here in this life and do this work that I'm doing. And I'm going to do the best that I can for them. And every chance that I get to speak on it, I'm going to speak on it because it's just so aggravating and it's so tiring because it's just like, what the fuck?
Understood.
Like, it's just a mess.
Do you feel like you're able, I feel like I'm asking a question I already know the answer to, but your art expresses a lot of what you just expressed. I mean, certainly in the Contemporary Art Museum show that's in St. Louis right now. Do you at least feel like you're able to generate dialogue? Or
just sit and have no conversation with people? Why I need to have a conversation with
I don't mean you to them. I mean with it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not fortunate. Fortunately and unfortunately, I don't sit at the museum all day, so I don't know what people think about when they leave the galleries. So I don't. My work is not about sparking conversation, and I don't think art that's too much responsibility. The art. It's like that's too much responsibility for people who don't, for a lot of people who just make drawings of whatever. It's like, I'm not going to put I'm not going to put my livelihood experience in the hands of somebody who, who's not a medical doctor or whatever. Like, I'm going to trust I'm going to work to trust people who are working through that. And so for my work, I'm not here to make conversation. I'm here making my own statement. And that's what my exhibition and most of my projects are. They're my interests. They're spaces that I want to make. They're issues and things that I want to talk about, but I'm not, there's no ulterior motive and no goal like that for me. Because I don't want that responsibility. I'm not an activist. I'm an artist, and I'm not gonna be. I'm not a craftsman. I'm not working through craft. I'm not doing that. I'm just an artist. And when one recognizes and allows themselves to be who they are and be in a place in a space, you get to like focus a little bit more. You get to like be more in tune. So, I mean, I ask a lot of questions, and I'm interested in wanting to make a lot of space for a lot of things. And so you'll see conversations or questions that are in the work that kind of relate to some of those things. But more or less, it's just to be able to have a space for all of it. You know, it's a space for contention, like you described. It's a space for possibility and imagination. It's a space for joy for some people who can't read the language or the codes that are in the work. And there are spaces for people to address bias and, you know, the negativization of certain things. So there's like, it's like a compound situation where there is room and there is not for a lot of different things. And I can't tell the viewer or the people going to the exhibition exactly what to think or to see, but I can present quite a few things together in one that allow for some of that reality to permeate their experience. Maybe they won't necessarily get it all, but they will get some.
I would certainly hope so, because you know, my initial take was, as soon as I walked in, was that it felt so enveloping. It's particularly, for lack of a better term, correct me on this, but kind of the wallpaper effect of covering about, you know, maybe 3/4 of that gallery with just these, you know, I mean, obviously it's subjective. For me, it was very powerful imagery and wording that was mixed in all over the wall, along with your three-dimensional objects that were scattered throughout the gallery. So I agree. I mean, everybody's going to interpret and get whatever it is they're going to get out of an experience.
There's no interpreting. I mean, I tell you, I'm showing exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
There's no way to interpret. That's the thing. You can't interpret reading. You know, there's no way to interpret it. It's like you read it and it's either you understand the language or you don't. You know, it's like you don't need, it's not, I'm not telling you something that you go and you like, okay, well, I'm gonna put this thing together and this thing together and then I'm gonna make something else.
Yeah.
Art is not, you take from it what you want and then you go make something else. People make exactly what they want you to deal with and then deal with what they're giving you. Don't, you know, take and try to do something else than exactly what has already been shared. And I think that is a part of the social construction of the cognitive dissonance that disallows it disallows people to be held responsible for their behavior. You know, it's a part of that structure that is giving room and giving space for certain things to be acceptable when they're not.
So just changing gears slightly here, are there artists out there right now or in the past, and it doesn't have to be in you know, in ceramics, just in general, that you take particular inspiration from?
No, I think of myself as being in conversation with folks. So there are like people who I'm interested in and people who have done quite innovative things that I would like to be connected with and to like realize and like recognize what they were doing and learn from them, but not really inspiration, because my questions and the work that all artists are, well, a lot of artists are doing is not coming from other art. It's coming from the life and the experience that they've lived. So can't look at art for experience from life. So I could rattle off a lot of names, but I think one thing that's really important, and that's a part of it all, is that it's that I'm constantly looking. And so there are people that I don't necessarily know of right now that I will come to know one day. There's work that I will always remember. And so I'm always looking through books. Instead of like looking directly at any artist or anything, I'm looking through a lot of books. There's a book called Salt by B. Ingrid Olsen. And she's an artist in Chicago. Yeah. It's a book called Salt and poems by Jesse Karsten. I'm reading Common Sense by Jessica Barron. Looking at catalog resume for Robert Gober, and a catalog resume is the life's work of an artist, not just like a specific catalog of a specific show, but it's an exhibition documenting all their work across time. Oh, I'm not wearing my hat. I feel like I'm wearing my hat. So I'm looking at architecture books. I'm renovating my house. So it's like, I'm thinking about doorways and passageways, and my building was built 100 years ago. So there are 100-year-old timbers inside, you know. And what does it look like? What does it mean to like insulate an old building? What does it mean to take down the plaster and lath and put an insulation and then cover those walls with drywall? You know, what is a wall? Why do we use drywall? Why don't we just fill it up with solid plaster? You know, it's like, I know that costs a certain amount of material, but how would that material perform? You know, what would light look like cast on a wall that's made out of plaster instead of a wall made out of drywall and paint? You know, what is a material that you wouldn't have to paint? Could you use that in your house? So I'm thinking about building my own house. I'm thinking about, you know, work that I want to make, but I'm also thinking about, like I was saying before, how to bridge this gap between agency and action. And can I bring more action to what I'm doing that's agent and has a greater effect or a greater resolve in its relationship to other people around me. And I'm trying to look at what other people are doing that is affecting and changing things around them, you know, for other people and for themselves. So thinking about what Rig Lowe is doing in Houston, Texas, and what Mark Bradford is doing in Los Angeles, working with contemporary ideas and helping foster youth have capacity of getting and securing experiences to where they can be better supported and self-reliant when they get out of foster care. I'm like looking and dealing with so much.
I have a loosely related question a little bit further on, but I'm going to move on to something about technique. And that is that you use like a lot of assemblage in your work. You use trompe or like found objects that appear to be made out of glass or ceramic or aluminum. So how are you?
Appear to be made out of glass or
they are made out of
ceramic. Yeah, that's the fooling.
How did you like figure out how to utilize the technique? Was that just on your own? Did you figure that out on yourself, or it just, because to me, as somebody who doesn't do that, it just seems super complex.
It is complex. It is difficult because it's about like building. It's about building from materials have meaning and they have histories. Processes also have histories. So if you work through a certain process and you're working with certain content, then you need to, you know, you have to balance the material and the process together. But then it has to be situated and relating to some kind of social and cultural dynamic or a part of the social and cultural phenomenon of the life that we're living. And so to make trompe is to make sculptures out of one material look like all these other things just talks about how it's such a part of our imagination of the life that we're living. So it's not necessarily just about the material, not just about what the material can do, but the capacity and space of where the material can exist, where all these other things don't, you know, or where you don't, you know, and in that space of where the work or where the material is performing and inhabiting a certain space in our mind or certain space in reality, is that space also where we can continue to think about making change in society? You know, is that a space where some of the very things or some of the very issues that we're facing and dealing with, could that space also be a room where some of those challenges could be overcome?
So I'm looking at my next question. I'm trying to like reconfigure it. Thinking collages, for instance. Do you get a sense of like a theme that you want to work on, or is it more?
All my work has been growing from a work that I've been making for over 10 years. So it's not, I mean, the themes are from life experiences. So it's not that I'm just like gonna pull something out of thin air and it like becomes a way of doing something or a way of thinking about something, but it's all based on something that's done in the past or coming from something or a reflection or a question that I have in one work that I didn't get to solve or resolve. So then I put it in the next work, and I just kind of keep working in that way, that it just kind of continues to scaffold on top of each other.
Mm-hmm. So I tend to focus on, I tend to be fascinated by titles when I'm music, like song titles, art, painting titles, or whatever. Your titles are particularly interesting to me. They're long often. And I'm curious, this is something I talk to my writing students about all the time, about the importance of a really good title that connects with the work in some way. And I am going to take a leap and say that you don't just like grab a title and go, that you're probably pretty deliberative about it. Do you feel like you sweat the details on a title?
I don't sweat it, but I do spend quite a bit of time working through it. But then it just like, in college, I wrote an artist statement. I said that I want my artwork, or I want some of the questions or issues that I'm dealing with to be resolved and unresolved, and that the issues and questions that I have for myself or that come up in my work are all like a part of an everlasting feedback loop. So it's always coming from itself and going back into itself, and new things are being put into this propeller that is moving the practice forward. So it's all moving the practice forward. So the titles are born from and usually situated in the art itself and coming from parts of what is going on in the work. But then there are other parts that I'm hoping that you can kind of also arrive at and kind of go towards.
Well, and this would be a good opportunity to let people know who are listening on the podcast that if they want to look at the video version of this interview, they can look at these images as well.
Yes. Well, there's also a video that the museum put together that you can get a tour of the exhibition without actually having to go to the museum. So if you're from out of town,
yeah,
or something like that, you can get access to the gallery through like a 4-minute video that I'm so happy that they were able to get together. And so one work is entitled, the large digital collage is titled Wet Wagon Wheels, bracket, parentheses, shelved over stacked, maxed media, close parentheses, changes needed, but you have to change first, close the bracket, St. Louis underlined. And the color, like the words are formatted in different colors and fonts and textures, and they're underlined, they're bold, they're crossed through, they're italicized, they're highlighted, they have the squiggly brackets, they have the strong bold brackets, and some of them are bigger, some of the words are larger than others, and so there's emphasis and weight on the language. So it's not just performing as a way of, or an entry or a resolve to what you're supposed to get from the work, but it's almost like there's all these different steps you can take that give you access and entry into the work.
I am so glad that you described that. I had actually rehearsed several of your titles, trying to figure out how to make it sound kind of flowy.
When you
That was fantastic the way you just did it.
I appreciate it.
I love that.
Like reading them, sometimes they get it. I mean, I write them as their lyrics. I write them as if they're lyrics, so you can get into it that way. But I don't never really know exactly what it's like or what it's doing.
I wanted to. I told you there was something you had mentioned that I was going to kind of glance off of again, and it was that in 2013 you instructed a course for children and adults with physical, developmental, and intellectual disabilities at Craft Alliance Center of Art and Design here in St. Louis. So, can you talk about how making art can? I'm trying to reformulate this question about the connection maybe that you feel when you're teaching art. And I was going to say to people of varying abilities, but maybe that's irrelevant. People
who are differently able, like everybody's differently able, but there's some people who have some extra and some more needed support that everybody, isn't able to necessarily give. And there's certain patience that you have to be able to share and give to others. And I mean, working at Craft Alliance with that class and that group of people was so special. And so, I mean, I teach at the Maryland Institute College of Art, and I do a lot of school visits. I do a lot of studio visits. It's very important to it's just very important to be able to make room for ideas and issues, but also just space to just be. And I know that I have a need, and so they have a need. I think it just also depends. Like in the classroom is very different than when I'm in a community art center environment. Yeah. Like a community art center environment is like everybody's just there to like when I was younger, somewhere to be, something to do. And so how do we make room for them and for that in that space, and that it be a space for where possibilities can be endless, and no one necessarily feels like what they're doing is not just that it's not wrong, but that that when they think about doing something, they can do it, and they, if it doesn't work that way, they can do it again. And at the university, for teaching for me, I work through growth. I try to work with my students so they start in a certain place and they arrive somewhere else by the end of the time of us working together. So it's not dependent on them feeling or having this pressure.
You're a well-recognized artist now, and I imagine that you get a lot of younger artists asking for your opinion or your advice on how they can move forward with their own work. And assuming that that's true, what do you tell them?
I don't get that much, to be honest. I do get people who call every once in a while asking to be my assistant.
Yeah.
And tell them that I'm not as big as they may think that I am. So people actually, I don't, a lot of, I do so many school sessions and like visiting artists opportunities, so that helps me be in touch and be involved and be in conversation with people. So that is like really precious and really beautiful. But I mean, I really just kind of work with my students and with my friends, but I kind of also give feedback on what they're willing to share with me. So it's all kind of on a case-by-case basis.
So you're clearly also doing workshops like this, and because you enjoy it, not because You have to. I mean, you seem, just as do I. I mean, you get something back from the students you're working with as well,
Yeah, it's like once amazing when you can see that sparkle in their eye.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing when you get that email and say, that thing that you helped me with, or that space, or that thing that we worked on, and we're in touch about. It's like, oh, it kind of like was able to resolve itself, and for them to be happy about it, feel proud of it and stuff. It's like, it's part of what's like that makes all that stuff so special. It makes it what, in a lot of ways, what makes it worth it.
So I am a musician, and I always ask this question of everybody that I talk with on these interviews, and that is, I would normally say, what's on your iPod, but I don't know that really works anymore. So
I have an iPod. I have an iPod. I have Thundercat.
The newest one?
All of them.
Okay.
All of them. I have that song California. What's that song? Joni Mitchell.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's going back about 50 years. Yep, I know the song exactly.
Yeah, Joni Mitchell, California. And I listened to quite a few Joni Mitchell songs.
Mm-hmm.
And people I talk to say, oh, they're so sad. And I don't really think that they're necessarily sad, but then they are kind of sad. And it's like, that's like nice kind of oscillation of, like just like referring to this again, is this balance or presence. It's, her voice is such a presence, so beautiful. I'm listening to a lot. I listen to a lot of Tracy Chapman. I listen to Tracy Chapman a lot. Jeanne, the group from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also doing this project, or I completed this project with a friend of mine named Richard Munaba, and it's a digital sculpture called Safety First in Fantasies Blockchain. And I created this playlist on Spotify called Maxed Mixer. And it's like a bunch of songs that I really like, but it's also a lot of songs that are the songs that people have sampled in other music. And so I put together the songs that people have sampled and the songs that are the ones where they come from and the ones that people made. And so
does that connect to the digital sculpture?
Well, it's embedded into
it. Is embedded. Okay.
It is a part of the digital sculpture.
So people have access to that. That's really great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you yourself play an instrument?
I used to play baritone saxophone for 4 years. Yeah, my teacher, Hammett Blewett, died in 2018, and he's from Lovejoy or Brooklyn, Illinois. He's one of the most important late 20th century saxophone players. And so it's like it was like such a blessing to be able to work with him and hear and learn from him in life, because of everything that he has been through and everything that he did. And it was awesome.
Do you listen to music when you're working?
It depends. Sometimes I want my studio silent. I can't work right now because it's so much noise. Like doing the windows, doing the renovation, so many holes everywhere. You see the foam in the wall. It's just like so much noise. Physically.
Well, you're also giving direction based on what I've heard here today. So I can imagine it would be difficult to get much done.
Yeah, I'm trying to like pinball. So yeah, right now studio is eating. Right now is like cooking food and being able to be warm in bed and watch movies on my new projector.
Yes, nice. All right, well, I've got one kind of sort of silly question, not that silly. I think it's kind of cool, but here it is. Here's the scenario for you. We have a new administration taking office. Okay, this is completely made up, so All right. So in this made up scenario, we've got a decision to create a brand new cabinet position, and it would be the Secretary of the Arts. We're going to forget about the NEA for just a second. And you're the one who's put in charge. So what would your priorities be for if you were the Secretary of the Arts for the United States?
I mean, it depends on how much budget I have.
Well, let's assume you have a pretty decent budget.
What's decent? Like $1 billion, $1 trillion?
If we can really fantasize, can we at least say at least half the military budget?
500 million. I mean, I would want to talk about infrastructure and innovative design that doesn't solely have to be based on rich people who can pay for it to be done. I would want to make it STEAM and not STEM. And I would want people to stop thinking about art as this like decorative thing or this thing that people have no access to, and try to and when you think about solving a problem and you're trying to engage content, and then you're trying to also build something through that and communicate that is also part of the art process, the art and design process. It's not just problem solving. You problem solve in all areas of your life. And as the Secretary of the Arts, I would work through communicating and trying to rectify the gaps and barriers in communication to where the systematic growth can evolve just as much as steps we've taken in STEM have gotten us this far. Steps through STEAM and cultural redevelopment and social reconstruction could take us even further.
You have my nomination and my support. I love that answer. Kahlil, you know that I've been trying to get you for about 1.5 years now, so I am so glad that we were able to make this happen.
I appreciate it. It's always good. I have visited and worked with Eileen Berman quite a bit, who teaches in the art program. Her and her husband, Scott, are dear friends of mine at SLU. So, it's nice to be able to be a part of the community and the team pushing questions and thoughts forward. It was great to be here with you today.
Thank you so much.